Welcome to the Play Action Podcast, brought to us by our friends at SBRodds.com. Links right below us if you want to go check out these lines that we're going to be discussing as they change in real time in all the different books. There's plenty of places to go see those. SBRodds.com. There's also links below to subscribe. And if you want to leave us a comment, tell us if we're getting things really right or really wrong. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. My name's Dave Farrell, alongside Joe Fortenbaugh and Matt Brown. Guys, let's first start by talking about who is not going to be playing this upcoming week. And the Carolina Panthers, looking all white hot, coming off their Monday night game, are going to put their feet up and relax for a week. They're on a bye week, as are the Colts, the 49ers, and the Jets. So 3 out of the 4 teams we probably wouldn't care about if you're thinking about it from like a fantasy perspective, but certainly teams that you may want to target if you're looking at games overall.
I don't know, Dave. Things are riding high up there in the Bay Area. Let me tell you, things are looking.
Got that win, baby.
Things are looking up. Beat down of the Giants there. Joe, I'm sure you've basically just been doing cartwheels down the street, right? For like the last 48 hours.
I've been swimming in content. I've just been swimming in content now that the Niners have this win. It's unbelievable. And if you try to explain the concept of tanking to people, they give you nothing but Herm Edwards. Will you play to win? What are you going to do? You're going to frame that ticket? You're going to hold on to that ticket where Janoris Jenkins mailed it in on the season and the Giants laid down for you? It's a nice win for Kyle Shanahan, and it'll be nice to see what the Niners do off the bye against Seattle, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo or they ride the hot hand in C.J. Beathard. But overall, there's only too much to get excited about, and one of those is that you just gave away the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, for people who love Jimmy Garoppolo, basically this bye week couldn't have come at a worse time because C.J. Beathard actually hurt his hand in that game, but he's going to have a week to recover, so he might be actually able to get back in there. And Dave, you mentioned the Panthers, man. Listen, this team, I think, is probably the team that we've given the least amount of credit to, but we really need to start looking at this team seriously because that defense is for real. We understand that defense travels as well. And listen, as much as we were saying about Cam Newton to begin this season, he has looked really good. And what did we talk about was the key to this Panthers team starting to look really good, and that was Cam Newton being able to run the ball. And he has done that for the last 6 weeks. He's taken off, had tons of rushing yards this past week, and starting to look really, really good. I think that Carolina team's going to make some noise.
All right, well, let's take a look here at our slate for this week. And again, SBRodds.com is where we're getting all these odds. We'll start with a game that's less than thrilling, at least on paper. Baltimore traveling to Green Bay. Kind of surprised me when I first saw this line that Baltimore are the road favorites in this spot. Opened at 2.5-point favorites now. That's down to 2, 1-point favorite over on 5 dimes. Matt, news and notes on this game. What do we know?
Yeah, we're looking here. Running back Terrence West could be back from a calf injury there for the Ravens. It's really on the Packers side of the ball here. Both running backs go down this past week. Aaron Jones with an MCL. He's going to be out for about 3 to 6 weeks is what Adam Schefter's reporting. And then Ty Montgomery re-aggravated those ribs of his. So both of those guys going to be out. Looks like it's going to be Jamal Williams that's going there for Green Bay.
This game is gross. I'm sorry. I just got to come in and say it. I mean, what do you want to do? Do you want to lay points with Joe Flacco on the road in this spot?
We have some great games this week, though. So, like,
we do.
While we're starting out on a dud here, like last week's slate sucked. Like, it was horrible. At least this week we got some great games.
We do. I mean, from a handicapping perspective, there's so much more on the board that I would rather look at than this game, to be honest with you. Because again, how are you going to lay points with Flacco on the road? The guy has been an absolute just embarrassment for the better portion of the season. He did go to Oakland and play well on the road, but that's a terrible Raider defense. Meanwhile, here's Brett Hundley coming off a win in Chicago. He looked a little bit better, but do you really bank on the Packers to put it together 2 weeks in a row? I think about how the Saints went up there and had no problems with these guys. The Lions had no problems with them recently. I don't know. I don't want to go with the under here. I might lean to laying the points with Flacco just because there's a little bit of a veteran presence in that spot, but you can't love this thing, Matt.
No, and Joe, what did we do this past week? We laid off of all these horrible games that we did that were completely unpredictable, and we had a winning week this week because we bet the games that we felt like that we knew kind of the situation and what was going on here. Dave, listen, I know we don't want to start this show off with a double pass here from Matt and Joe, but this is a double pass for me. This is a double pass. We're going to both pass on this one. You don't know what you get in this Baltimore team and then this Green Bay team. Did they figure it out? Maybe they figured it out, but then now they have a completely different running back that's going to be coming in here. So it's just so many unknowns here. It's one of those games I'll just look further down the card.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, it's one of those games where, you don't really know what to expect from either team. We're 11 weeks into the season now. There's plenty of other teams that we know enough about to be confident in moving forward. These are not two of those teams. Now, this next game, I don't know if this is a much better example. Arizona is on the road at Houston. Houston, of course, without Deshaun Watson. Tom Savage is still under center. Arizona has got all sorts of injury problems of their own. Their starting quarterback in Carson Palmer is down and out for what looks like to be the remainder of the season. Arizona favored by 2. Now that's down to 1 in most places. A pick 'em over at 5 dimes, as well as bookmaker. Matt, anything that we need to know beyond the obvious ones with the quarterbacks being out in this one?
Yeah, so Drew Stanton actually sprained his knee in that last game. He did practice on a very limited basis on Tuesday, but if he misses, we're going to be having a Blaine Gabbert sighting here for the Cardinals in this one. Bruce Arians basically said that if he doesn't feel like Drew Stanton is pretty close to 100%, he's not going to let him play. He said he doesn't want to put him in in harm's way in this one. So it leads me to believe with that kind of coach speak that we're probably going to get Blaine Gabbert in this one. On the Texans side of the ball, Will Fuller broke his rib. So he's definitely going to be out in week 11 here. Wasn't getting a ton of looks anyway, but they're going to be down again to really only one good wide receiver there for the Texans.
All right, Joe, take us through this one. I mean, Arizona seemed to be resting everything on Adrian Peterson going up against Seattle, and they saw that coming. And Adrian Peterson, after a really nice week the previous week, didn't get much going last week against the Seahawks in Thursday Night Football. So what happens in this game? Is this a game that you want to play or another one of these stayaways?
Well, here's your Exhibit A in the Colin Kaepernick collusion case. If you're going to track Blake Bortles against Tom Savage, and then you're going to try to sell the world on the fact that no one's colluding to keep this guy out of the NFL.
No, Blaine Gabbert, worse than Blake Bortles. Gabbert,
I said Bortles.
Yeah.
Oh, my
even
God.
worse.
Okay,
even worse.
Okay, I made a huge mistake. Blaine Gabbert versus Tom Savage is all you need to know that collusion has, in fact, taken place. Tom Savage, I think, much like Osweiler and Trevor Siemian, has single-handedly found a way to get his defense and the rest of his team to quit on the season. You saw it in the Rams game, and you've seen it with Denver. Denver's just a couple years removed from winning that Super Bowl. They know what a good team looks like. They also know they don't have it, so they're done. Houston was riding so high emotionally with Deshaun Watson. They were coming off the flood. They had J.J. Watt raising all that money. He was healthy. Deshaun Watson had taken over. The sky looked to be the limit, and then it all came crashing down. I don't think there's a single member of this Houston Texans team that's interested in playing anymore this season. But again, if it's a pick'em situation like we're seeing at the best spots, you want to do that with Blaine Gabbert on the road? I'd look to the over here. You're seeing 39s out there. I think you could have 2 quarterbacks who make so many mistakes in this game. You throw in one big defensive play, one big special teams play. I think you can get the 40 points here. Slightly into the over, Matt.
Yeah, a couple of maybe short field situations. I mean, you can see if you look at SBR odds, like every book hadn't even hung a line yet on this one. I think they're going to hold out to see what this quarterback situation looks like in Arizona. For me, I'm going to need to see basically who's going to be under center here. If Drew Stanton is going, I actually kind of lean to Arizona here because I believe what you believe, and I believe this Houston team has quit. If we have Blaine Gabbert, it's going to be a pass for me. This guy he is so bad that he is now a third-string quarterback. I mean, Joe, we're talking about a guy that was starting in the NFL and is so bad that he can't even be a second-string guy. He is a third-string guy now.
He was a top 10 pick.
Yeah. So for me, it's all who's under center. We'll monitor that leading up to Sunday.
All right, next up is Washington at New Orleans. Now, Washington had Minnesota come to town last week, and Minnesota just dusted them. The defense couldn't stop anyone. And Case Keenum was putting up numbers, unbelievable numbers. His quarterback rating in that game was over 150. Now they have to take on Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints, who are white hot. They're traveling to New Orleans for this game. The total in this one reflects that. It's over 50 almost everywhere. Opens at 50.5. Now it's up to 51. Matt, is there anything that we need to know as far as injuries in this game? Because Washington has been pretty banged up.
Yeah, I mean, ankle and MCL injury for Rob Kelly, starting running back there for Washington. He's been put on IR. Surprise, surprise. Jordan Reed missed last week. I know that is a shocker to everyone that follows football. But I mean, listen, Vernon Davis steps in. I think he's almost equal at this juncture. Vernon Davis at 400 years old is still out there running like 4-4.
He's had a surprisingly positive year. He deserves a lot of credit for the year he's put together.
I would venture to say this guy can still run like a 4.5. I mean, like he looks nimble out there for a guy of his age. Anyway, Jordan Reed is actually questionable, but if we've seen what we've seen with Jordan Reed, even if he does play, he's probably only going to play for a few plays anyway. On the New Orleans side of the ball, they are actually pretty healthy here. Most guys coming out of everything, most of the key guys anyway, coming out of this healthy, which is scary for anybody that has to play this team right now.
All right, Joe, over to you on this one. How do you see this game going? Do you like the over? Do you like the under? And is New Orleans going to win by 9.5 like they have it in some places? Or are you a lot more comfortable with this 7.5, 8 number that we also see floating around?
If you like the Washington side of the equation, you're going to 5 dimes, according to SBR, because they've got that 9.5 up there. I'm guessing that's teaser protection. You're going to have a lot of people taking the Saints from 7.5, teasing it with 6 points all the way down to 1.5. You get through the 7, you get through the key number of 3, you're sitting down there at 1.5. So 5 dimes is jumping ahead of the schedule here. They're putting out the 9.5 to prevent that from happening. So let's ask ourselves, what would the look ahead line on this have been if we go back to last week? While I don't have the data in front of me, let's be honest. The Saints going to Buffalo and roasting the Bills, combined with the Redskins losing at home to the Vikings, has got this thing tilted too far in New Orleans' favor, in my opinion. Washington, despite their flaws, they play tight games even when they lose. They're a very competitive bunch. They just can't convert on 3rd and short. They make too many minor mistakes in crucial situations. So right here, that 9.5, that would have me leaning to Washington without question, because I think the line is overinflated based on what we saw last week, and New Orleans is finally starting to gain a lot of hype. You also see a total of about 50.5 to 51. I would consider the over here. The over is 13-3 in Washington's last 16 games. They play to a lot of overs. New Orleans over 12-5-1 over their last 18 home games. I think you have the potential for a lot of points in this game, although that's going to be a very square play. So you'd have to jump on this now, because this could be up to 53 by game time, Matt.
Yeah, so I'm going to wait until this gets up there, and then I'm going to take the under here. I like this Saints defense, and listen, this is a defense that's getting after it over these last few weeks. If you've not watched this Saints team, it is no longer just the fun and gun situation where Drew Brees drops back 45 times a game and throws for 380 yards. That's not what they do. They're running the ball a whole lot more, which, as we know, which it didn't play this past week. Obviously, they went up there to Buffalo and scored 1 million points. But usually when you run the ball as much as the Saints are running the ball, the clock runs a lot more long. It reduces the amount of plays that you run, reduces the amount of possessions, and keeps the totals down here. So I'm going to wait until later, as you mentioned, where this probably creeps up to, like you said, 53, 54, and then I'll take the under in this one. And like you said, I'm rushing to 5 dimes to take the 9.5 right here. And this is not an indictment on the Saints. It's just the Redskins don't suck. The Redskins are actually pretty good. Kirk Cousins played much better this week because he got all his offensive linemen back. That was one of the things, too, that we didn't really talk about and make a big enough deal of last week whenever we were talking about this game, was that he did get all of his offensive linemen back, which helped out a ton. I mean, that game ended up only being an 8-point game. I mean, the Vikings did get out to a big lead, but they fought back there, this Redskins team. 9.5, yeah. 7, I see a 7.5. Not really dealing with that too much. I think you need to go to 5 dimes where you're getting, which is crazy right now, you're getting a full 2 points over most of the other books out there.
Okay, SBRodds.com is where you can go to see all these different lines, as well as actual links to the sports books, the ratings of the sports books, everything else that you're going to appreciate if you're making some wagers here. How about this one? Jacksonville at Cleveland, this one considerably lower, and it's actually coming down in the total, Matt. 38 is where we started, 37.5 now in most places, even seeing a 37 out there at Heritage right now. Jacksonville on the road at Cleveland, and of course, Jacksonville is the favorite, laying anywhere from 7.5 to 8.5 points. Any news and notes on this game?
Well, yeah, if you bet the Jags last week, you probably want to shoot yourself in the head with how everything, like on the 7 different occasions they had to cover.
We played them.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we played them.
3 guys right here played them.
On the 5 different occasions they had to cover that game, and none of which actually ended up playing out. A couple of them are on the Jags, one of them on the referees, just all kinds of bad beats whenever it came to that. Honestly, the big standout here from the Jags side is Leonard Fournette returned from about a month off here, and I don't know if it was punishment. I don't know if it was production. I don't know what exactly it was, but they were in a very tight game in that fourth quarter, Dave, and he got 1 carry down the stretch there for this team. And we're talking about a 3-point game here, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. On the Brown side of the ball, they lost linebacker Jamie Collins. He's out for the season with an MCL. And Deshaun Kaiser actually left that game with a rib injury. Cody Kessler ended up finishing up that game. Looks like he might start this week for the Browns.
All right, Joe, over to you. What do you got?
A lot of points to lay on the road with an offense that doesn't move the ball very well when the ball is placed in Blake Bortles' hands. We saw that last week. Bad decision-making, bad interceptions. The Leonard Fournette thing's interesting. My working theory is that this is Tom Coughlin and Doug Marrone trying to send a message. You are not above the team. Stop acting like you're the star. Buy into what everybody else is doing or sit your butt on the bench. And I believe that's what they're trying to get across to him. He missed the team photo. There's probably a little bit more here going on behind the scenes. I don't think any of it's major, but it's a young guy with a big ego who probably needs a wake-up call. And this is the type of thing Coughlin used to do in New York. Michael Strahan and those dudes hated him. Then they won a Super Bowl, and everybody bought in.
And Joe, on the defensive side of the ball as well, Jalen Ramsey, as good as he is, playing out of his mind, but stupid penalties, stupid taunting stuff, doing different things like that can cost you close games. They got lucky in this game, to be honest with you, this past week. But like you said, this is a team that with a bunch of superstars, but they're super young, and he's going to have to get after them and make sure that they don't cost him a game with these stupid penalties.
I mean, you've got a low total here. We're talking 37.5 points. I don't know if we've seen one this low all season. And this is basically telling you they don't expect the Browns to score at all in this game. I don't know what Jacksonville on the road has played very well. We saw what they did in Pittsburgh. If anything, I might look at a Cleveland team total and play under it. I think they might get a field goal. They might get one touchdown, but outside of that, it's going to be turnovers and mistakes. You're at a point for like the first time in a decade where the Jags have got to be looking around thinking, oh my God, Thanksgiving's right around the corner and we are right in the thick of this thing. I think you're going to get a motivated effort. It's just too many points to lay on the road with Bortles. And I'm not sure this defense is that great yet, like Seattle, where they could go in back in the day and take over a game completely. So I'd look under on the team total for the Browns.
Joe, this is going to open up 6-point teasers for me right here. You just tease that 7.5 number down to 1.5. They are not going to lose to Cleveland, but they could definitely only win by a field goal. Cleveland understands what's going on now. They have the path yet again to the number 1 overall pick, and they would be absolutely stupid to not just go ahead and lose out in this situation here. I don't think Cody Kessler that bad of a quarterback compared to Deshaun Kaiser. They're probably a push at this point in their careers, but can you see any reason? I mean, listen, I know they're not going to throw it, Joe, quote unquote, throw it, but there's no way Jacksonville loses this game. There's no way Cleveland lets them lose this game. So for me, seems like the great opening to a 6-point teaser here. Get it down to 1.5, and Jacksonville's definitely going to win.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Next game is in the NFC North. Detroit is on the road in Chicago for this one. Detroit, not surprisingly, the favorites, but less than a field goal at open, and it stayed there in some spots. Other places, they're laying 3 now on the road, and the total in this one has come down quite a bit. So it started at 44, now it's down to 41. Matt, as far as news and notes on this game, what do we know?
Yeah, the Lions might actually get starting offensive lineman TJ Lang back from concussion, which is actually pretty big. If you've been watching this Lions offensive line here lately, a bunch of bums they're starting here, pulling guys off the practice squad and stuff to start. So big if he's able to come back from concussion. On the Bears side, I mean, just coming off a terrible, terrible loss at home, 5.5-point favorites to the Packers. Mitch Trubisky had to throw 35 times. You know that was not what they wanted to do. Jordan Howard only ran the ball 15 times. And then, Joe, we saw one of the all-time John Foxest moves ever in the history of John Fox moves.
Brutal.
Could have had the ball first and an inch and decided to challenge it instead of just taking first and an inch from the 1 inch line, decided to challenge it and ends up losing the ball because the guy fumbled the ball, which listen, horrible rule.
It's a stupid rule.
The worst rule in maybe all of sports, but still, it's a rule that is still in place here. You could have had first and 1 inch, and instead you decide to try and just cheat the system and get that 1 inch for free, and instead you end up turning the ball over. It was the most John Fox move basically ever.
And that's the big takeaway for this game, because here's the analysis you're going to get from the pro Bear side. Hey, the Bears have done a nice job at home this season, and they have. They beat Pittsburgh at home. They're 4-1 against the spread at home. The only loss against the spread was just this past week against the Packers. 8-2 against the spread at home over their last 10 going back to last year. So people will tell you that the Bears have a decent running game. They can keep it close. The Lions got to come outdoors, blah, blah, blah. Listen to Chicago Sports Talk Radio this week. look at the newspapers, check the blogs and the Twitter accounts. They want John Fox gone. I think he's lost this team. It's been an entire week so far of people calling for this dude's job, talking about that exact play, talking about the buffoonery that is a guy who I believe now, since he took over as the Bears head coach, has been a favorite 6 times. He has not covered a single spread as a favorite. He doesn't even win the games. Fox has got to go. The city wants him gone, and I think he's losing the locker room too in this spot. Detroit comes in here. I think they win comfortably.
2.5. I jumped on this as soon as I saw it when it opened. This is the first bet I made this week. One of my favorite bets on the week. I'm with you 1,000% here. I think Detroit, listen, they're not lighting the world on fire by any stretch of the imagination, but Matthew Stafford's having a pretty solid season, especially whenever you consider, like I said, kind of a patchwork offensive line and no run game to speak of whatsoever here. I like Detroit. I like Detroit big in this game. I think 2.5 is easy money here for me. This is like my favorite bet of I'm not going to say of the year, but one of my favorite bets of the week for sure.
I'm with you on that, Matt. The only thing that I worry about is that it's a slight look ahead spot for Detroit because the NFC North, they must win this game. So it's important, but the Vikings on Thanksgiving Day, like that's the big marquee game for the Detroit Lions. I don't think they're going to overlook the Chicago Bears, but I'm with you. As far as when I saw lines, one that surprised me, Detroit only, laying 3 on the road here. I love that quite a bit, and especially since you can get it for 2.5 at a lot of spots, a pretty good one. This next game is a mess. So Tampa Bay at Miami. We saw what happened to Miami, of course, Monday Night Football. They're on a short week dealing with Tampa Bay. Matt, when it comes to news and notes on this one, I mean, this one's just loaded.
What's that? Is that a glitch that just skipped us to the next game? Is that what just happened in the video right there? Oh, sorry. We gotta move on to the next game.
Right. Get over this one.
Yeah. I mean, look, Jameis Winston sat out. Ryan Fitzpatrick started in a spot where he should have been able to just light up a Jets defense that didn't show up and didn't want to play, but instead both teams didn't show up. Both teams didn't want to play. One of the worst football games that I've watched in a long time. And yes, I did sit through and watch that. Fitzpatrick looks like he's probably going to start again this week, though it hasn't been fully announced. I think that's why you only see a few of the books hanging the lines right now, Dave. So, I mean, look, this Miami team is complete garbage. We said it when they were 4-2, the worst winning record team in the NFL through 6 weeks. I still believe now, after we've watched them play, they continue to just disappoint. Jay Cutler is just a piece of garbage as well. That said, are they more garbage? If you can go to 5 dimes right now and it's a pick 'em, it is a pick 'em game. Gun to my head. Dolphins
just don't, man. Like we just don't have to bet on every game. Like this is just stay away from it. You're just flipping a coin. Who knows who's going to show up?
It is a typical stay away situation. But I'll just say, let me frame it this way, then, Joe. Gun to your head in a pick 'em situation. You're probably taking the Dolphins, right?
No, take the bullet. Take the bullet.
Yeah, I'll take the bullet. I didn't realize that option was on the table until Dave said it. I'd probably take the bullet. I mean, what do you want to do with Miami? What do you want to do with them? I mean, did you watch them on Monday Night Football? They had nothing. And Tampa Bay, if it's Fitzpatrick at quarterback, okay, maybe there's a reason to consider him because Winston with this offense was an absolute mess. So maybe I think Dirk Cutter. All right, let's look at the mindset of both teams. I think Dirk Cutter's fighting for a job. So at the very least, he's going to try to get the Buccaneers ready to play this game. I think Gase in Miami, ever since Tannehill went down and Cutler showed he's not the guy, I think Miami resigned itself to the fact that they weren't going to have a good season. So they're probably going through the motions. Now they're probably showing up to the facility, doing exactly what they need to do and leaving, nothing extra. I think perhaps in Tampa Bay, you might get a little bit more because you've got a coaching staff that's desperately trying to hold on to their jobs. And I think they're backed into a corner, whereas Miami is resigned to their fate for the season, slightly in the Tampa Bay.
They do get Mike Evans back off suspension. So, I mean, listen, you have to think that they couldn't be any, I mean, it's got to be at least a tick up here. I mean, because it can't be any worse than last week. That game was the worst game I've watched all year. Golly, that was horrible.
Next up, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're rolling off of a bye, and they are enormous favorites. It's actually come down a little bit, but they're still double-digit favorites pretty much across the board. In fact, entirely across the board as I look here on SBRodds.com live right now. Total in this one is at 43.5, 44 in most places. And while the Kansas City Chiefs opened laying 13 on the road against the Giants, it's come down to 10.5, 11.5, depending on where you look, even 10 in some places. But the Giants, I mean, when you talk about teams that are in total disarray, people calling for jobs. I mean, Macadoomed is the big headline that I keep seeing pop up all over the place. They want him out of town. The Giants were kind enough to give the 49ers the first win of their season last week. And then here you go. You got Kansas City who needs to bounce back, right? And they're coming off the bye. Is this going to be a double-digit bloodbath, Matt?
So looking here, the big news and notes here is I think Kansas City on this bye, if you read some of the beat writers out there, realized whenever they were smashing people, they were feeding Kareem Hunt left and right, and that's how they were smashing people. Then the last few weeks, they kind of backed off of that, and the word is they're going to start feeding Kareem Hunt again and maybe get back on track. You think that would be the right play for sure. On the Giants side of the ball, as you mentioned, complete dumpster fire, complete train wreck. On top of that, lost linebacker Keenan Robinson. He's on IR for the year. They lost Justin Pugh, who's a guard there with a back injury. I mean, just adding insult to injury essentially here. Janoris Jenkins, I'm sure Joe's going to have a hot take on this guy who looks just absolutely like he has packed it in. Completely gave up in that game. I mean, completely gave up on several plays in that game. And if you hear all these rumors about these players that are talking about how he's lost the locker room and how it leads me to believe that's probably coming from the defensive side of the ball. Probably one Janoris Jenkins, maybe, and I think there's probably people out there on that side of the ball that don't like him very much, and it's pretty much showing on the field.
$63 million is what they're paying that dude. Now, look, there's a reason he got kicked out of Florida. There's a reason that after his contract was up with the Rams as one of the better corners in the league, St. Louis just said, see ya. I mean, there's a reason. People will show you who they are, right? Just let them do it. Just let him do it. And for Jenkins, he's shown you his entire career he's a me-first guy. And he's doing it now, and you were dumb enough to bite and give him all that money. So that's something the Giants have to reconcile. Two things to think about here. Number one, when Ben McAdoo gets the axe, if it happens during the season, I'm going to want the Giants that week. I think that that's going to be a spot where when they run him off, you'll get one last motivated effort from this team because they'll be so happy the guy's gone. They'll show up and they'll play one good game. So keep an eye on that. Number two, though, with him in the saddle, they don't care. And you're going up against a Chiefs team that if no one's talked about it yet, if you haven't heard about it this week, you're going to hear a lot of it leading into Sunday. Andy Reid off the bye. No coach in the history of football is better with extra time to prepare than Andy Reid. Off the bye, going all the way back to his time in Philadelphia, his record is legendary. There's a rule in sports betting. You don't lay double digits on the road in the NFL. I'll lay double digits on the road in the NFL right here. Give me the Chiefs.
When this has gone down to 10, that was a number I was comfortable with. Another play that I've already made. Listen, I do know about Andy Reid off the bye, and two, whenever I read, you have smart coaches.
You didn't know it until I told you. You learned it from me.
Listen. This is what you have when you have smart coaches too. Whenever you have this guy and he goes in, and the reason probably, Joe, is the same reason that I mentioned at the top of this segment right here, was he realized and went and evaluated and said, you know what? This is what I did wrong over the past few weeks here. We got away from what was actually working for us, and that is why we started to struggle. And I believe that they're going to get back to what they were doing before this went all haywire on them over the last few weeks. I think they go in there and smash the Giants. This Giants team definitely has quit. We talk about some of these other teams. This team has quit for sure. Both sides of the ball. Well, you know what? I will say this. There was a decent effort from Eli Manning and Sterling Shepard in that game on the offensive side of the ball. But whenever you're letting San Francisco score at will, there's nothing the offense can do to catch up there. But yeah, this Kansas City team goes and smashes.
All right, so we talked about how white hot the Saints are. We're going to talk about the Eagles here shortly. The other two teams in the NFC that are just ripping right now are the Rams and the Vikings, and they square off in Minneapolis this Sunday. This is a fun game. Minnesota favored by 2.5 at open. It's come down to 1, 2 in some places. Total remains about the same, 46.5 to 46, depending on where you look. Matt, news and notes on this one.
Yeah, on the Rams side of the ball, defensive lineman Robert Quinn actually sat out this past week with an illness, but that was just an illness, so he should be back for this. Said that he feels a little bit better now, so don't worry about him not playing. On the Vikings side of the ball, defensive lineman Everson Griffin sat out in week 10, but he looks to be back in week 11, so that helps that Vikings defense a ton. And on the Vikings side here, just kind of an odd thing, some coach speak that came out where he said he was actually going to name the quarterback later in the week. And it seems a little odd to me
that
you have a guy in Case Keenum who has won you all these games. And, listen, if it's one of those things where he thinks it's going to light a fire under his ass or something, So be it, I guess. But
you don't need to do that. You've got a Case Keenum who is by quarterback rating, a top 3 quarterback in the league right now. Don't mess with it. Don't fix it if it's not broken. Case Keenum has earned the respect, and he deserves more than that. Don't have Teddy B warming up on the sideline when Case Keenum throws a pick like they did last Sunday against Washington. Just stop that. Case Keenum's winning games.
And that's coming from a Minnesota fan, folks.
You're damn right it is.
But one of the things about Keenum here that really made this weird, outside of just the fact that they're winning games, is he seems to have a real rapport with this wide receiving core. Listen, we talked about how Josh Norman's a very tough corner there in Washington. So what happened? The slot receiver, Adam Thielen, gets fed. He understands how to run the offense. He knows how to get 8 catches on 12 targets for 166 yards for Adam Thielen in this game because he understands. I think Case Keenum's playing at a pretty high level right now. It was real odd to me, that statement.
So, Joe, does that give you pause with the Minnesota Vikings? I mean, in this spot, they are favored. They do play better at home. Rams are coming to town. Some people have said that the Rams have had kind of a soft schedule leading up to this point in the season. How do you view this game, and who do you think is ultimately going to win? And do you have a side that you're thinking, I'm comfortable playing that?
This is a great football game. This is an absolutely fantastic football game to give us. If you had said Case Keenum versus Jared Goff leading into Thanksgiving was going to be the marquee game, I would have said, thanks, planet Earth, but I've had enough. I'll catch you on the flip side. But here we are, Minnesota and the Rams. 2 converging trends here. Number 1, Minnesota at home, 21-6 against the spread over the last 27. They play very well inside their own building, no matter what building that is. They've been doing it for a long time, and it's getting more and more hostile up there as time goes by because this is a bona fide playoff team. So how do Jared Goff and the Rams respond? Well, let's be honest. Goff and the Rams are 4-0 on the road this year. They have traveled well. They have performed well on the road. So how is that going to translate in the dome with the noise? I look at the total of 46, and I think that what they're trying to tell us is that, well, Minnesota's defense is going to slow down this high-octane offense. I don't see it. I think the Ram offense is going to continue to do what the Ram offense does. Maybe they don't win the game, but a total of 46, I'll go over here because I think Minnesota gets theirs as well at home. You might have 60 points on the board in this one.
Don't want to play a side in this one, but I love the total here at 46. Look, you look at an offense that can score in every facet of the game, and that's what we really are looking. That's why we talk about why the Saints are rolling so much right now. Those wide receivers in Michael Thomas, he gets his, but also both running backs. You look here at this Rams team. If they don't want to go to Gurley, okay, cool. We'll throw a bomb to Sammy Watkins. Oh, we'll have 8 receptions for 170 for Robert Woods. And do we need a possession receiver? Cool. We got Cooper Kupp coming out of the slot right there. I think this Rams team firing on all cylinders. And on the opposite side of the ball, like we just mentioned, Case Keenum. You got Stephon Diggs back. You got Adam Thielen. That's really all he needs. And then you got an all-star tight end in Kyle Rudolph. I think this turns into kind of a shootout, Joe. I got to be honest with you. I think 46, easy number for me to play the over here. I would imagine if you want 46, you're probably going to need to get that relatively soon because I think when people dig into this game a little bit more, they're going to see the same thing we are.
Next up is Buffalo at Los Angeles, the Chargers, and Buffalo in a big need of a bounce back. They have had a rough couple of weeks, including just getting blistered at home by the Saints this past week. The Chargers also dealing with their own issues, Matt. Phillip Rivers has been in concussion protocol this week. What do we know about this at this point, and how much of a concern is it?
Yeah, so the Bills, they got Charles Clay back. That didn't really matter, obviously, as we saw. Kelvin Benjamin suited up. He caught 3 passes on 6 targets for 42 yards. Tyrod Taylor actually got benched in this game, and he was playing so terribly. Nathan Peterman came in there for the Bills. I still think that he's in no threat of starting over Tyrod Taylor. It was just one of those things where mercy, we'll sit Tyrod Taylor on the sideline. Like you mentioned, Phillip Rivers, kind of a surprise here in the concussion protocol. He went to the team on Monday and self-reported. So that leads me to believe that he's feeling pretty off here. And probably is a pretty strong candidate to not play, I would think, because this is one of those things where there wasn't an obvious play in the game where he thought that where they thought on the sideline that he needed to be tested. He comes in on a Monday and tells them, hey, guys, my brain's not working right.
So here's where we sit on this one. The Chargers laying 4.5 or 4, depending on where you look at home. Total in this one is lower. So 43.5 is where it sits right now. Not everyone has it posted because of what's going on with Phillip Rivers, but how do you see it, Joe?
Well, we talked about this earlier with Janoris Jenkins. Teams apply as well. let people show you who they are, right? They're going to show you their true character. All you have to do is sit back and watch them, and teams do the same thing. And what do we know about the Chargers? Since the start of last season, right? So we're talking about a season and a half. The Chargers have 14 one-score losses. 14 one-score losses. Now, they've only played, 9 plus, that's 25 games. In a 25-game stretch, they've lost 14 games by one score. This team is the absolute best at finding ways to lose. All you have to do is hang with them for about 53, 54 minutes, and they'll find a way to lose it late. So I see 4.5 points out there. That could be 2 scores based on the field goal situation in this game. I lean to Buffalo plus the points. I don't love it, and I know the Bills are reeling right now, but I think Sean McDermott's got him ready to play. I think Tyrod Taylor wants to play. I think overall it's a good locker room. They're going to come out here, and I think it's a nice situation for a travel spot for Bills fans to take over StubHub Center. So all in all, I'll take the points with the Bills.
Yeah, so I'll roll the dice with the Bills as well and assume that Phillip Rivers isn't going to play. When a guy and somebody, I wish I remember so I could attribute this to, but when people have self-reported these concussion things, they typically do not play the week that they self-report because usually, like I said, it must be bad enough that they feel like they need to go in and tell the team, hey, something's going wrong here. So that puts Kellen Clemens under center here. Kellen Clemens, fine, 10-year vet in the league, basically a career backup. That's perfectly fine, but I don't think he's going to have what it takes to get it done here. Now, I do think we're in the middle of seeing Buffalo regress to the mean here. Like, they played out of their minds at the beginning of the season, and I think what we're seeing is this team come back down to earth where they probably should have been all along. That said, getting 4.5 points, getting more than that field goal with a Phillip Rivers-less team, that's how I'll roll the dice here and go ahead and take it now. Imagine it changes a little bit if Phillip Rivers has announced that he is going to play. But for me, I'll take the 4.5 at this point, assuming he's not going to go.
How about this for a fun game? New England, they're going to be in Mexico City with Oakland this week. And New England, of course, just beat up on Denver last week. And they stayed in Denver and played and practiced at altitude. So that way they could get ready for Mexico City, which is actually
even higher.
A higher altitude, exactly, than Mile High. So Denver being smart, or excuse me, not Denver, New England being smart about the way they prepare for this game against Oakland. If you recall last season, the Mexico City game was actually a whole lot of fun. It was when Brock Osweiler played actually really well for once for the Houston Texans against the Raiders down in Mexico City. But Matt, the question that I have for you in this one, outside of just the news and notes, is just the general feeling if you think that Oakland and Derek Carr and Amari Cooper can finally all get synced up on offense and go blow for blow with New England and expose that defense that we saw struggling for the Patriots earlier in the season, because the total here has actually gone up from 50 to 52 to 52.5 in this game, and New England is favored by a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, look, on the New England side, they can only get stronger. It looks like wide receiver Chris Hogan's going to be back this week. So they go out, they absolutely bully the Broncos, and then they're going to get even better, it looks like, getting one of their starting wide receivers back this week. And you guys remember Mike Gillislee, that guy that scored all those touchdowns the first few games of the week? They're so good. He was inactive this past week. They didn't even make him active because that's how deep they are. They found out how to just make this work year in and year out. I can't believe how they continue to do this. On the Raiders side of the ball, Cordarrian Conley's actually been placed on IR with shin splints, so he's not going to be.
Don't get me started on this.
Yeah,
I got to deal with this on a daily basis, man.
Yeah, with shin splints, so he's not going to be available. He was not really available all season long anyway, so not really that big of a deal there for Oakland. To answer your question, Dave, I think this is just going to be a bad spot here for Oakland. This is what we've seen with these Bill Belichick teams, right? Bill Belichick figures it out as the season goes along. And what if they figured out? It's not scoring. They were always scoring. That wasn't the problem. We were talking about, this could be a historically bad defense. How terrible is this defense? Oh, my God, everyone's doing whatever they want. And what have they done the last 4 weeks? They've gone out and shut everybody down. Now, granted, some of those weren't world beaters, but it wasn't world beaters that were throwing for 300 yards against them at the beginning of the season either. So for me, I think they figured it out. I think this is I think this is just another spot where Bill Belichick and these Patriots go out and just smash. Joe, I know we weren't incredibly high on the Raiders coming into this season as everybody else was. And I know that this was a game that you had circled before the season started.
They're going to get shellacked in this game. The difference between the contenders, the legitimate Super Bowl contenders, and everybody else is the attention to detail. So let's go through the last week. The Patriots are finding ways to land guys like Martellus Bennett, and then they're playing a game in Denver, and they have the foresight to spend a week practicing at the Air Force Academy to get acclimated to the climb in elevation. What are the Raiders doing? They're playing air guitar on their shovel in Las Vegas at a groundbreaking ceremony. That's what Mark Davis was doing Monday night. Granted, he's having a great time, but that's what the Raiders are right now. The Raiders are a never-ending sea of distractions. Gary and Conley, your first-round pick, played in 2 games this season, like 90 snaps. Shin splints. He actually has come out and said shin splints aren't the issue. They won't tell you what the problem is with the first-round pick, and it's just bringing up all this speculation from everybody else. The team's a mess. They're going to fire the offensive coordinator for the 2nd year in a row. The head coach is on the hot seat. He's lucky he signed that extension. And meanwhile, what do you have? A Patriot team that's buttoned up. Here's the real concern for the Raiders. They're flying to Mexico Saturday evening. Their whole theory on elevation is, and they used this last year, if you get in and out as quickly as possible, you won't have the effects hit you as hard, which is why the Patriots are spending an extended period at elevation rather than, 2 or 3 days. That's what's most dangerous is 2 or 3 days. Either do it long or do it short. The Raiders are trying to get in and out. The problem is when your plane lands in Mexico City, you're still a really long bus ride from where you stay and from where the stadium is. If anything goes wrong with the flight, weather or anything like that, this team's going to get in late Saturday.
Huge erupting volcano, maybe.
Right. There could be so many issues that get in their way from being ready from this game on time. And it's not a night game. It's a 1:30 Pacific start. So I'll take the Patriots here. The Patriots are buttoned up. They're going to go down there and crush the Raiders.
Look, guys, the first 4 games of the season, we talk about like this defense. They gave up 42. They gave up 20. They gave up 33. They gave up 33. And then we look at this last little stretch here. Defense gave up 14, 17, 7, 13, and 16. Haven't given up more than 17 points in the last 5 games. This is just what Bill Belichick does. This is just what he does. They had a leak. He plugged the leak.
All right, so next up, we've got Cincinnati at Denver, and shockingly, Denver, this is a real testament to just how little faith people have in Cincinnati, right? Denver's actually the favorite at home in this one. They're laying 2.5. Total has come down from 49 to 38.5, 39 in most places. Matt, news and notes on this game because these are 2 teams that have been struggling to keep it together as well.
Yeah, Pac-Man Jones is in the concussion protocol, so it looks like the Bengals will be down a corner, and running back Jeremy Hill placed on IR with an ankle injury, so Joe Mixon pretty much is the guy there now for the Bengals. On the Broncos side of the ball, really all the news here coming out of Denver is we're going to see Paxton Lynch basically as soon as the guy's able to throw the ball 25 yards down the field because he can't be any worse than what we're watching going on under center right now. It is just disgusting to watch. So as soon as Paxton Lynch, they might be trying to get him to throw left-handed or something, like just so that they don't waste that draft pick. Joe, you and I were joking about it Saturday night, but seriously, this is just one of the worst situations at quarterback for a team that you got to think if they had someone with a pulse would actually be, at least contending.
And Brock Osweiler almost decapitated a man on the sidelines this past week.
That was the highlight of his performance.
It really was. At least it was a spiral. God, it was so bad.
We're going to play the over in this game. It's sitting at 38.5. There's a misconception here about the reality of the Denver Bronco defense. People call them the no-fly zone, right? Great Denver defense. They've given up over 90 points the last 2 weeks. That's not the hallmark of a great defense. There are teams that struggle and have bad games. You don't give up over 90 points 2 weeks in a row if it turns out that you are a great defense. They realize they're not going anywhere. They're 2 years removed from the Super Bowl, and they know, looking around that roster, they're not good enough to contend. So the defense isn't playing very hard right now. Andy Dalton and the Bengals, say what you want, they're a mess, but here and there they put up a half-decent performance because Marvin Lewis is fighting for a job, the quarterback's fighting for a job, and A.J. Green, I believe, is headed for free agency and wants to continue to put good tape out there. I think you end up having enough breakdowns and screw-ups in this game that you get over the total of 38.5 points, and there are a few books, according to SBR odds, that are out there offering over 38.5.
So this was a pass for me. The only thing I will say is if that number gets to 3, I think I'm going to be okay rolling with the Bengals here. And that kind of makes me disgusted to say. But like you mentioned, Joe, at the end of the day, if you go talent for talent, right, is Andy Dalton a bad quarterback? Yes. But is he better than anything that's going to be under center for Denver? Yes. If you talk about the running back situation, it's a push, I think, and probably leans a little bit to Joe Mixon when it comes down to there. On a wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 1, I'm going to take AJ Green over Demaryius Thomas every single time. So, I mean, whenever you look at the skill positions here, I think it matches up. I think it matches up better on the Bengals side of the ball. And like you mentioned, this Denver defense, everybody wants to remember the good old days and wants to remember fondly of this defense. And like you said, this defense, present day, you have to remove that great in front. Is it a good defense? It's probably still good, definitely not great. And when you continually are on the field, as long as they are, because you can't put any drives together on the offensive side of the ball, sometimes they're turning the ball over, so you're playing on short fields and everything like that, having to defend from the 30-yard line. I think Cincinnati puts the ball in the end zone a few times here, and I think that's all it's going to take.
All right, next up is Philadelphia at Dallas. This is our Sunday night game, and this is another fun one. Philadelphia is laying 3.5 on the road against Dallas. Total in this one has actually gone up from 47 to 48. Matt, Philadelphia has been just wrecking shop, but when it comes to some injuries that Dallas has to worry about, I mean, Zeke is one thing, but you got Sean Lee, you got Tyron Smith, defense and offense, two huge pieces that could be missing this week with Philadelphia coming to town.
Yeah, on the Eagles side of the ball, corner Ronald Darby sprained his ankle. He's questionable as far as that goes, but I don't think that's a huge deal for them. On the Cowboys side, like you said, Sean Lee left with a hamstring injury. Looks like it's going to be a multiple week thing. Tyron Smith sat out with a groin injury, and what that equaled was 8 sacks on Dak Prescott. He got hit 11 times in that game versus the Falcons here. Joe, you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday. But this Dallas team, I think, is in for a rude awakening here on the stretch run.
Sean Lee's the key to this entire game. If he can go, you want to lean towards Dallas. If he's out for this game, forget about it. Sean Lee means more to that defense and possibly more to that team than anybody else outside of Prescott and possibly Elliott. Go back through the numbers, the yards per play with Lee versus without Lee. It is remarkable. He's the quarterback of the defense. He's the most popular player and most valuable player on that defense. And against Carson Wentz and an Eagle team that's not only high flying in the offensive department, but has had 2 weeks to get ready for this game. If you don't have Sean Lee, you're going to get roasted. So right now I side to the Eagles here. Sunday night game, generally I don't want to lay points with the road team, but Philly's been playing great football. The only concern, you go on the bye when you're cooking with gas like that. Do you come off sluggish? Because we saw it with Pittsburgh, and we've seen it with other teams as well. But I can't get behind Dallas if they don't have Sean Lee.
No, I'm all over Philadelphia in this one, and I'll tell you why. Is even if Sean Lee goes, it's a hamstring injury, right, Joe? So this is one of those things that all it takes is one play for that to get aggravated again, and he's certainly not going to be 100%, even if he decides to go. So now, you're looking at a Philadelphia team that doesn't rely on the run anyway. So now you got Sean Lee. Are you thinking like, okay, well, maybe he's going to be able to deal with Zach Ertz? No, he's not, especially not when he's hobbled. Like, that's just not going to happen. Zach Ertz is going to win that battle. And then, like you mentioned, the rest of the offense with Aguilar, with Jeffrey, everything's clicking right now. Like we said, a little bit of a concern missing one of your starting corners, but with Dallas, Dez hasn't really showed me anything this year. Terrence Williams is nothing to be afraid of. And then without Ezekiel Elliott, they just decided to abandon what's been working all year for this team. You come in, Alfred Morris only gets 14 carries in the game. They only give Rod Smith a couple. They only give McFadden 1. So a team that has been as run heavy as they are decide to put it all on Dak Prescott's arm with a receiving core that's a Des Bryant that's lost a step, and Terrence Williams, who's never really that good to begin with. Jason Witten's got 1 foot in retirement. I love Philadelphia in this game. I don't care if it is in Dallas. I think that this is a bad stretch for Dallas.
Another fun one on Monday night. This one's happening at CenturyLink in Seattle. Atlanta is on the road in Seattle. And, Matt, when we talk about news and notes for this one, at the top of the list has got to be Richard Sherman, right? Blows out his Achilles, and he is not going for Seattle for the rest of the season now.
Yeah, so Sherman's gone, and then you got C.J. Prosise was put on the IR, so they're down a pass-catching running back there. Their new toy and Dwayne Brown, he got rolled up on. He's dealing with knee and ankle injuries, so he might be out this week. And if you've seen Russell Wilson's been running for his life all season long, so that can't be great. On the Falcons side of the ball, Devontae Freeman on his second carry of the game got a concussion. It's his second one of the season, so him coming back this week is not going to happen. He's out week 11 for sure, probably out multiple weeks here whenever you get those concussions in a short amount of time. So Devontae Freeman's going to be out. Fortunately, when you're Atlanta, you got Tevin Coleman to rely on.
45 is the total in this one, and Seattle is favored by 3 at home. It's come down to 2.5 in a couple of places. Joe, how do you see it?
All right, take away the fact that Seattle's had extra rest to get ready for this game. Take away all that, and just on a neutral field, just all things considered, who would you say is the better team here? Would you say Atlanta's the better team, or would you say Seattle's the better team? I'd probably lean to Seattle being a better football team. Do you guys have an opinion?
I would agree with that on Seattle. I mean, look, it's hard because recency bias makes you want to go, well, Atlanta, because they had that nice game last week with Dallas. I still think all things considered, Seattle's a better football team.
It's not that for me. I think the current iteration of Seattle is a worse team than the current iteration of Atlanta. And whenever you look at Richard Sherman being gone, whenever you look at the absolutely no running game whatsoever, Thomas Rawls is now your workhorse back there for them. And then again, you get the offensive lineman that you think is going to be able to help you keep Russell Wilson from having to scramble around 40 yards before he throws a pass downfield, which, by the way, that was an amazing play whenever he did that. But, yeah, I mean, that was absolutely crazy. But again, how many times are you going to dodge those bullets, right? I mean, that was a 1 in 100 chance he's going to make a play like that. So this iteration, I think, of Atlanta is actually a better team of this iteration of Seattle.
The way I see it is it's really close. I might give a slight edge to Seattle, but I see it close. So your basic home field advantage for an average team would be 3 points. This is Monday night at the Clink. Monday night at the Clink is worth 6.5, 7 points. Any bookmaker in the business will tell you Monday night, Sunday night at the Clink's worth 6.5, 7 points. And we're looking at 2.5. Give me the Seahawks. I know they're banged up, but they've had 10 days to get ready and they're in the playoff hunt. Atlanta, Dave, like Dave was just saying, hey, they just beat the Cowboys. They're back. They're not back. Tyron Smith was out. Sean Lee got hurt. Ezekiel Elliott didn't play. And Jason Garrett was clueless when it came to trying to double team Adrian Claiborne off the edge. Give me the Seahawks here. I think there's value in the line.
I'm on the complete opposite side here. I will take the points with Atlanta. How are you going to stop Julio Jones? Tell me how you're going to stop Julio Jones without Richard
Steve
Sherman.
Sarkisian.
Well, I mean, they started.
He's done a good job stopping Julio Jones all season.
Well, they finally force-fed him, and look what happened. I mean, listen, it only took them this long to realize, oh, my God, we have a top 3 wide receiver in the league. Wow, that's crazy. Look what happens whenever we force-feed this guy. And listen, like I said, I know Devontae Freeman's a good running back, but Tevin Coleman has stepped in every time Devontae Freeman's gone down, and he's proven that he can play here in the NFL. Seattle against the run has been leaky at best. I mean, listen, this Atlanta team here getting points, I don't even care if it's on the road. I think this is it. I like Atlanta to win outright.
Okay, let's bounce back to the Thursday night game for those of you that are joining us early. And again, if you want to see all these odds, sbrodds.com. Links are right below, and make sure you comment on the video. Tell us what you think about this one. For those of you that are joining us, like I said early on here, Tennessee is on the road at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh really disappointing. Matt, you mentioned it earlier with teams coming off the bye. Excuse me, Joe, you did, and then not exactly cooking with gasoline. Last week, the Pittsburgh Steelers almost lost that game to the Indianapolis Colts. They ended up winning it by 3 points, but certainly didn't cover. Now they're at home. Now they're favored by a touchdown. They've got Tennessee coming to town, who's had all sorts of problems with stopping anyone, much less a powerful Pittsburgh offense. What do we know about any news and notes on this one, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, they got Delaney Walker back there for the Titans. He had 6 for 63, so he just stepped right back in and picked up right where he left off. And that's a big get for Marcus Mariota. He loves throwing to Delaney Walker. One of the other big notes here is that rookie wide receiver Corey Davis. And Joe, I know you were a fan of this guy coming out of college, a big, huge, athletic guy, kind of eased back in last week, but then he played on 78 of 84 offensive snaps this past week, got 10 targets for Marcus Mariota. So now he's got a guy 6'3", blazing fast with great hands to throw to as well. And the reason that is of note is on the Steelers side of the ball, Joe Hayden, who has been playing out of his mind at corner this year, broke his fibula and is going to be out for the rest of the season there for the Steelers. So again, just something to keep in mind that he's Marcus Mariota got a couple of toys back here, and now Steelers are down their best corner.
So, Joe, the total in this one, 44 in most places. How do you see it going on Thursday night?
Pittsburgh was 3-0 heading into the bye. That was the worst possible time for the bye to come for them because they had really figured it out. So they come off the bye. They look sluggish in this game against a lousy Indianapolis team. And now people are wondering, how good is Pittsburgh? Are we back to questioning them again? I think they just needed to kick some rust off the tires because now you got a Thursday night game at Heinz Field. It's going to be a much better performance on the Pittsburgh side, in my opinion, especially on the offensive end. Then there's the Titans. In their last 62 games, they've covered 17 spreads. 17 covers in 62 games. They don't cover overall. They never cover on the road. They're 7-20 against the number over the last 27 road games. I'll take Pittsburgh here, and I'll open up a bunch of 6-point teasers to start the week off with the Steelers.
I lean towards the over in this one. I actually think, and a lot of it has to do with what you said. I believe that Pittsburgh kind of gets their swag back a little bit, knocks the rust off. And we've seen this time and time again this year. A lot of these teams coming off of byes just absolutely sleepwalking through whenever they come back out. And then I think Tennessee is going to score some points here. I mean, listen, the loss of Joe Hayden's big. I mean, this Pittsburgh defense has been playing lights out. To lose your best corner is certainly not something they're going to be able to just shake off here. I think that Tennessee's able to score some points here. I think Pittsburgh scores some points. I lean the over in this one.
All right, let's talk about a college game. We're coming off of a weekend where there was just a beautiful college slate. And then this weekend, there's just not. It's just, a lot of this Alabama versus Mercer nonsense, Clemson versus Citadel. But there is a fun game, and ESPN's going to take the road show to Madison, and Wisconsin has got Michigan coming to town. Now, Wisconsin at home was laying 9.5 at open. Now it's down to 7.5. Total is down just a tick from 42 to 41 in most places, 40.5, even 40 in a couple of spots. So, Matt, anything that we need to know as far as news and notes?
Not really anything that stands out that's going to affect the way that you're going to look at this game. Really and truly, what stands out in this game is how is Wisconsin and Michigan, how is Wisconsin going to be, how are they going to deal with being the marquee of the week, being the prize of the week? Because Wisconsin always kind of seems to be the afterthought there in the Big Ten. I guess whatever it is. How many teams are in the Big Ten now? Whatever it is.
Will they rise to the occasion, or will it be too much for them? That's the big question.
I think the thing that stands out here, Joe, to me, the first thing that jumped off the page here is how this number has gone down from the open here. It looks like most of the people that jumped on this early think that this is going to be just basically a slugfest.
And that's what I like, because I want to go over the total. Sitting there at 40 points, right? And with Michigan, you think defense, but the defense hasn't been great this year. 22-8-1 is the over in the last 31 Michigan games. 22 overs in the last 31 Michigan games. The over is 6-2 in the last 8 for Wisconsin, and 7-3 to the over in the last 10 games at Camp Randall. When you've got a 40-point spread in college football, you need a 40-point total in college football. You need a lot of things to go your way for an under. You need a lot of long drives that end with missed field goals, that end with big-time mistakes. What you don't want are big-time plays. And in this scenario, 1 or 2 big-time plays with how slow that clock moves, I'll take the over of 40 points. Michigan, Harbaugh's going to have this team ready to play. They're a terrible red zone offense, but 1 or 2 plays from them, Wisconsin handles the rest. I think you get north of 40 here.
Basically just wait until game day and fade whichever mascot head that Corso puts on. He's been atrocious so far this year.
All right, so let's move on to our picks of the week. We were talking earlier. I think we all agree, as far as a consensus pick, that we all like Philadelphia in this spot. Tyron Smith not going for the Cowboys is what it looks like, along with Sean Lee. Zeke being suspended. Philadelphia, getting 3 on the road. They're laying 3 on the road. So we like Philadelphia in that spot. But Joe, who else do you have? Who's at the top of your list for your plays of the week?
2 games I'll throw out there. I think Matt will agree with at least one. The over in the Rams Vikings game of 46 points. We both were talking very highly about that game earlier today. The Rams travel well, 4-0 on the road this season. The Vikings play outstanding football at home. I think it's going to be a great game to watch, and I think they get north of 46. This game should be more towards 50, like the Saints game. You're seeing it at 46 because of the thought process that Minnesota's defense will slow down the Ram offense, perhaps to an extent. But remember, they're number 1 in point differential this year, and I believe they're number 1 in scoring as well. You can only slow them down so much. I'll also lay the points with New England in Mexico City over the Raiders.
Yeah, love New England for sure. I think for me, though, Detroit over Chicago. Listen, 2.5 points. This Lions team's going to go in there and shellac Chicago.
All right, get over to sbrodds.com, and very simply, you can see all the lines from all the books, the ratings of the books, and so much more. Leave us some comments below. Tell us what you think. Alongside Matt Brown and Joe Fortenbaugh, my name's Dave Farah. Thank you for watching and listening to the Play Action Podcast.